Okay, welcome back everyone for day 2 of Creative AI Sydney. I'm Ollie Bown and I've set up this event with some great collaborators at UNSW. I'd just particularly like to thank again the great work that we're getting, the great help we're getting from Pierre Longchamp and Chloe McFadden and Caroline Pegram, who's not actually with us this morning yet. Thanks all for coming to the face-to-face meetup. We've also got people joining on Twitch stream, and this will be recorded for future sharing as well. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation at the UNSW Paddington campus, and to pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We're very lucky to have beautiful weather and a great gathering here today, and I'm very grateful for everyone's attendance and participation. So we're really hoping to get some lively discussion and engagement. We had a great session yesterday, 2 sessions, one very broadly looking at the state of technology and culture and how AI is beginning to play into that, and then one more specifically looking at music, music technology, music generation technology, in the way that that's integrating into companies like Warner and Spotify. So we had some really interesting insights from those people, lots of interesting thoughts, and we're looking forward to picking up this conversation again this morning. So I'm going to hand over to Pierre, who's chairing this session, who will introduce our speakers. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ollie. I want to thank as well my friends Frank and Karin, who introduced me to Caroline, who was on the panel music yesterday, who then introduced me to Ollie. And this past 2 years have been great for me to be able to interface with all the creative people, I would say, orbiting around this space. Ollie has been very vocal about AI being a multidisciplinary practice, and I think this event was an excellent, deep illustration of this multidisciplinarity, and I'm very excited to animate this industry number 2 panel today, which will push further this idea of multidisciplinarity. Yesterday was great, definitely. I loved all the talk. The French accent of François was great for me to hear. You know, voice language was part of the discussion. There's a cultural, I would say, attraction to the French accent, even if it's talking in English. The choice of word matter and give a deeper meaning to his talk to me yesterday. And meaning was another keyword that came up every 5 minutes yesterday. Now, we need this multidisciplinarity approach to give meaning to this exploration of what AI can do. And like Ollie said yesterday in introduction, we don't want only engineers and technologists to do that. We want artists, we want humanities, we want philosophers, economists, business people. It needs to be a societal thing if we want it to be positive, productive, disruptive in a right way. So all those challenges, I'm sure we'll be learning a lot more about them today. So I don't come from creative industry. I'm a medical guy, not medical doctor, medical technologist. I have a PhD in industrial engineering, during which I studied the design process. So again, yesterday, iteration, creation, evaluation, all those cycles. I spent 4 years writing about that, trying to learn how to be an academic. I succeeded in getting a PhD and getting great feedback and loving these 4 years, but then I decided to become really a reflective practitioner and to go in the industry and to give up academia completely, and actually to give up France as well, and to move across the world to start this career in medical technology development. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Although I'm also a musician and a producer, I'm not making a living out of it, but I'm starting to be paid sometime because I'm also the very lucky dad of an artist, Lily Alaska. And when Simon yesterday evoked the dad experience of a young artist dealing with AI and the tada moment of AI creating music, that's something I'm experimenting every day with my daughter and with my son as well. So that was something else that really resonated for me in all the talks yesterday. So enough about myself. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Bofik Jossi, who is, you have already met him if you were here yesterday, because he was one of the audience members asking bright questions. We already have a lot of discussion, he and I, about all this space, all this hype, Midjourney, DALL-E. And I'm very thankful for Ollie's visionary planning of this event, because the last 2 weeks have been really the peak hype of those generative image thing. I mean, you can't open Instagram without pictures of the Sydney Harbour in whatever years, in the past, in the future, in all dimensions. That's really the perfect timing, and I think Joshi enthusiasm talking about this technology will be also a great match for this scope. He is a creative technologist. He has worked in many, many industries in the US with Kerr, Yahoo, Adobe Research, Lucasfilm, Light and Magic. He is now with Canva here in Sydney. And I leave the stage to you, Bofik, for approximately 10, 15 minutes. Sure. Thank you very much.
Ooh, all right. Good morning, everyone. Hi, so I'm Bofik. I'm from Canva. I'm sort of like an odd-jobbing sort of kind of research dork over there. And I'm going to be talking about, I guess, ML on the ground, right? So we've had a bunch of talks and a bunch of discussion about, I guess, some of the stratospheric ideas around ML, right? Like where ML is going to go, where the future is going to be, all of the potential. But let's talk a little bit about what's it like actually having ML in production, right? So I want to bring this to the sort of like a little bit more of a human scale, right? So, you know, when you actually try to use it, what's it actually like, right? So I'm going to reflect on a couple of examples there, just like maybe digging into a little bit more about like, you know, what's the practical reality of ML. So I want to just briefly talk about me just for a second and my journey here. And you know, I started off at CSIRO. I ended up working as a researcher at ILM. I was at Flickr working on sort of images at scale. Then I ended up at Adobe Research, and then now I'm here at Canva. And through all of that, you know, it's what I am just sort of like bringing this up as sort of a reflection of my bias here, right? I'm a tool maker, right? This is what I do. I've got a research background, but you know, in the end, the thing that I practically do is that I make tools for creative people. I make tools for artists, right? And as part of that, like I figured out that if I needed to be good at my job, then I also needed to learn a little bit about being an artist myself, right? So I sort of like hover somewhere in that space, right? Sort of like, you know, ping-ponging a little bit between sort of like research and tool making and artistry. So, you know, I want to just talk about sort of, you know, again, this stratospheric idea that, you know, with, and then specifically talking about image making here, right? So, you know, we could talk a lot about sort of creative ML in general, but for this talk, I'm going to focus on sort of like the image making side of things, right? And, you know, what it looks like from where we're standing right now is that, you know, we're on the precipice of like a seismic shift in how we make images, right? How we express ourselves artistically. The thing is that, you know, this is far from the first time this has happened, right? And I have this fantastic quote from this French poet and critic from 1859 at the dawn of photography, right? So this is a couple of years after the first sort of daguerreotype. And his basic take on it here was that, you know, what's going to happen is that photography is going to kill off painting, right? It's going to kill off, you know, creative expression. And this feeling, right, that like, you know, we're on the precipice of this new technology and it's going to sort of like kill everything that's gone before it is not an uncommon one, right? This is not the first time that we've gone through this process. So to a certain degree, I want to just sort of like call this out as kind of an encouragement that like, you know, things are going to change, but it's by no means going to kill off the craft and the artistry that already exists, right? And there's always going to be a need for artists. There's always going to be a need for sort of creative expression. Computers, at least I feel like they're not going to take that away. So, you know, when it comes to sort of like creative ML in practice, again, for images, right? What is it that, you know, how does it actually work when you actually sort of like, you know, start putting ML into sort of production? And really sort of like, you know, the areas in which it really sort of has been practical is for doing things like magnifying intent, right? So, you know, you still need, the artist still needs to provide the intent. The artist still needs to say, this is what I want to do. But then what you can do is that you can use the ML to sort of magnify the intent that you've got there. It's used for completing sequences, right? Again, sort of like, you know, if you look at the statistical background of the current generation of machine learning, really it's about sort of like completing or extending sequences, right? So interpolating into the future or whatever, but you know, that's where it's really strong for. And the other thing that it's really good for, and this is where it gets really interesting with the generative stuff, is for exploring data sets, right? So you've got data sets, and what you wanted to be able to do is that you want to be able to combine them in novel ways, but it's exploring the data that's there rather than synthesizing something that's new, and that's important, and I'll get back to that right towards the end. So I wanted to sort of like, I could have brought up like a bunch of examples, but what I'm going to do is that I'm actually just going to focus on one, right? So I'm going to focus on an example of where we used ML in production in my past, and I'm going to focus here on style transfer, which had its moment about, 5, 6 years ago, longer really, right? But I want to just talk a little bit about how it went for me, right? So it's a little bit of a personal experience that I had here. So early on in the days of style transfer, this was probably around 2016, I did like a lot of what other sort of like tech artists do, and I was working with someone who had put up on GitHub a little repo that and a little trained model for doing style transfer, right? And at the time, this was like brand new, right? So what you could do is that you could, for those who are not familiar with it, right? You take typically a photograph, but basically an image, and then you've got a style exemplar, right? So, I've used Picasso here as like one of his paintings as an example. And then what you can then do is that you can combine together. And, the selling point, the vague sort of selling point was that it re-expresses the image in the style of the exemplar that you give it. And when I did this, it turned out that at the time that I was playing around with this repo, very few people had actually tried doing this for video, right? So because I had the background in film, it wasn't too hard for me to sort of take a couple of image sequences and just spit out the individual images and do the style transfer on the images and sort of combine the result back together. So I wrote like a small script for doing this and ran it overnight. And this is where the art wank comes in, right? Because the style transfer was typically used for things that went together, right? So people would take, for example, like Starry Night, which is like a super moody painting, and they'd combine that with, say, like sequences from Blade Runner, right? And you know what? Stylistically, the two work together, and it seemed to work really well. And I was interested to see, could you take sort of two unlike things and combine them together, right? So I took sort of the symmetry and the perfection of Kubrick, and I combined it with the insanity of Picasso, right? And I just stuck these sequences together. I combined it all together into a video. I stuck it up on Vimeo and then promptly forgot about it, right? This was a little experiment that I did, and I just really forgot about it. Then what happened was that somebody somewhere found it. Somebody shared it, someone had seen it, and it blew up online. And this was really surprising to me, right? And while there were people who were interested in it from a technical point of view, what was really interesting was that all the interest that came from the art world into this, right? And it gave me a little bit of a clue sort of into sort of like, why would people in the art world be interested in sort of this technical exploration there? And a bunch of interesting conversations came out of this, talking about the capability of this and the sort of the future of this technology. But again, I just sort of put it down. And I thought, okay, that was a cool experiment. We learned a little bit about this technique. And again, I sort of put it down, right? So I was basically ready to move on to sort of the next interesting thing came along. And then what happened was that I got a call from these two people. So on the left there is David Shapiro, and in the middle there is Kristen Stewart, who's she's done like acting and a bunch of things, and she was looking to get out of acting and getting into directing. And the thing is with, when you're working on something really technical and experimental, to really turn it into a real thing, you need a real use case, right? You need a real need for someone to sort of like, so who's actually got a real need for it to really like deeply explore, is this a practical thing to do? And it turns out that, she was working on her first short film, and she had done a painting in a garage, right, which is on the bottom over there. And what she was interested to do was, like, she'd seen some of the work that I put online with the sort of the Picasso Odyssey stuff, and she went to me and she said, "Look, can you redraw some of the sequences in this short film that we're working on in the style of this painting, because the painting is the concept art for the film." And I thought, like, when you get a call like that, you just say yes, right? So I did that, and you know what? The results were okay, right? So. So again, like, we had this, we ended up using this for the poster on the film, and, we had this, I'm sure you folks have seen plenty of explainer videos like this, where the content image went the style image, and then we transferred the results together, right? So we did a little bit of, I guess, sort of processing to sort of drive in a particular direction, and we ended up with a style transfer result. And you know what? It went pretty well, right? We ended up taking the film to Sundance. It got used in the poster. I had a really good time out of all of this. But, the press would have you think that this was a relatively simple thing to do, but, the reality was that this technique was not simple, right? And this is the thing, right? I went into this thinking, okay, I've got this technique where I thought that I'd basically knock out this work in a weekend, right? So here was this style image. Here was the video sequences I had. I just decompose them, I run them on my laptop over the weekend, and we're done. But when I was actually working with the director had, Kristen Stewart, she had this like vision in her mind of what she wanted the result to be, right? And I was really wrong about it being simple, right? In fact, I was so wrong about it, we ended up writing a paper about how wrong I was, right? And we ended up spending a long time basically just decomposing the technique, trying to figure out how can we actually turn this into an actionable technique. And it turned out that there was a big gap between the promise of what this ML technique was and then actually practically using it in production, right? And I think it's worth noting that we have all this fuzzy stuff, all this stuff that's high on the hype cycle. Actually practically using it in production, using it on real stuff is hard because it's not an end-to-end thing. I made the mistake thinking I'm just going to use this style transfer, input in, results out, and we're done. That's only a fraction of what needs to get done. The ML is situated within a workflow, right? So it's never just a thing on its own. And re-emphasizing that point, ML is part of a workflow. It needs human needs human guidance, right? So human beings need to be able to get into this process. They need to be able to iterate on it to sort of drive it towards a particular creative outcome. And the other thing is these techniques are not fundamentally imaginative, right? The imagination still needs to come from humans. And it's a real mistake to sort of anthropomorphize it, right? It's statistics. It's still statistics. So you're not gonna. You can't rely on these techniques to sort of give you imagination. They're just surfacing what's there. So talking a little bit about sort of I guess what's zeitgeisty right now, right? So we're big on the hype cycle about sort of text-to-image transformers and what's happening in that space, and again, we're going through a very, very, very similar cycle here, right? So we've got things like DALL-E, Imagen, Stable Diffusion, for example, is the hot new thing right now. And there's rapid development in this space. It's insane. Every month there is a new class of techniques for, basically working in this space. And what's interesting right now is that if you talk to any of the people who are frankly selling these models, right? Remember, follow the money, right? They're sold with a promise of an end-to-end workflow, right? And it's never sort of explicitly stated, but it's kind of framed that way, right? And when we pick it up, we think, okay, I'm going to use this for a complete end-to-end workflow. But the thing that you need to remember here, again, is that when the hype cycle dies away, what's going to be left, right? When this is all done, right, what's going to be left and how much of this is going to continue forward and actually be used in a practical way? What part of it is going to be used in a workflow? So, as an example, right, and I don't mean to sort of dunk particularly on DALL-E here in particular, but I thought this was a really interesting example. So Heinz did a collaboration with OpenAI, and they had this ad campaign, right? And I think you can see some of these posters around Sydney. And the idea was that they collaborated with the AI, and this AI basically, when you feed in a prompt for tomato ketchup, it gives you Heinz bottles, right? It gives you that Heinz design look, and just superficially, it seems like, okay, this is fully automated advertising. Our ad agency's over. That was the provocation, right? But the reality was really, really different. So some folks started digging into this and going okay, if I actually take DALL-E and I start feeding it those same prompts, what happens? And the results are actually kind of pretty ordinary, really, right? So again, and what was missing here was that the framing that sure, maybe the results came out of DALL-E, but they did a bunch of prompt engineering. There was a whole bunch of behind the curtains, figuring out what needed to get done to actually really drive it in the creative direction that you needed to sort of get the output. And there's a very good chance when they had those final images, there was a little bit of touching up, a little bit of editing that happened, right? So I'm not saying completely don't believe the hype, but be critical. Right? Dig into it, find out what's happening, try it for yourself if you can. And really, and I'm not saying be skeptical of everything that you see, but keep in mind that these things always need to be, when you see the latest thing in the hype cycle, whatever it is that's happening in 3 months' time, think about it situated within a workflow rather than a thing on its own. So I guess my provocations sort of coming into the panel then, and they're really sort of more thoughts than provocations, is that I think when we're talking about creative ML, absolutely. I don't want to take away from the fact that, this work right now, everything that is happening in this space, especially in the last 5 years, it's wonderful and it's exciting and it's really cool. Don't lose that, right? I don't want to make you cynical, right? But the thing to remember here is that they're just tools, right? They're not human, they're not imaginative, don't anthropomorphize them. and situate them in terms of thinking about, like, you know, they're a kind of brush, they're a kind of tool for completing things, rather than sort of as sort of like an agent that you're working with, right? And I think be wary of being oversold, right? So again, like, you know, situate the idea within a workflow rather than sort of like thinking this is a complete end-to-end thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Jess.
So, hi. Yes, I am Jess. So yes, I also work at Canberra as a creative technologist, which is, yeah, very, very intuitive. And for once, it actually is kind of relevant for me to explain, like, what actually a creative technologist is. And so, like, I think the technologist part sort of makes sense, but I work with technology, I like technology. The creative part is what sort of trips people, I think. I use sort of this as an example of creativity. So the past year or so, I've been really into type. And type's pretty interesting. It's very like old, centuries old sort of technology. And we have like the web sort of really shaping all these new frontiers in type, because we're no longer constrained by physical, like actually like stamping down metal. And so there's this book, Novo Typo, and it's about different color, like using color inside the font as opposed, and so like you have like different attributes, like, and so then now we can think of like, what if like instead of bold you have color, like does color have semantic meaning inside the font? I don't know about you, but I don't think this is actually like a very good experience per se. Like we're pushing the frontiers, basically. We're leading the way. We're trailblazers, but we're not actually doing like, this is, you probably don't want to actually use this for like, I don't know, communicate, like writing a PhD, right? But it's what I think what we think of when we think of creativity initially. As opposed to, this is a book about learning like graphic design, and it's like very pop-up, and it's like physical, like very tactile. And it's about like sort of just like learn, and you could use like different overlays, this sort of thing. And so like, there's nothing like groundbreaking here, but we've sort of taken these concepts of like, oh, like what if we had a pop-up book, and like we sort of made it like, made a book interactive and tactile, which that's also this type of creativity, and it's like serving this purpose, right? So like, it's not about pushing frontiers anymore, but I still think it's novel and creative, right? And so like, I like to sort of navigate between the two. And so there's this concept of, the 4C model of creativity. And so there's the little c and big C. I don't know, I feel like I'm saying like a little story, like little c went to the market. But so the little c is essentially what we think of as this everyday creativity. So like you have a recipe, and so like you're gonna riff on that, you're gonna play around with it. Like the ramifications of it are sort of like really just individual. And then there's the big C, right? So the big C is like, I think like the genius, the creative genius. And I think we really think about this concept, like that it's like a strike of lightning. It's something that, like no offense to anyone in this room, but I doubt any of us probably will have this kind of like genius, because it's not even like about us, it's about your place in time, right? Like Cezanne like died penniless, right? But he was considered a big C now. And then so those were like sort of like the two main like concepts of creativity for a little while. And then there was the mini C and the pro C. And so the mini C is like someone that's actually learning about creative expression, as opposed to like just an individual. It's like me like going to art school. I'm not being sort of like innovative by like copying someone else, but I'm still learning, right? I'm learning so I can eventually be a genius, like theoretically. And then the pro is this person that actually does this stuff for a living, but is probably not going to be the big C. Like there's, yeah, many of us like any, creative professional, basically. And I think like, and so far at this conference as well, I feel like we've really focused on these big C's, which are like, you know, not really sort of relevant to most of us, and hard to pin down, and also, but also the pro C. And so like, and they're important, right? like they understand where these tools can fit in like quite easily. They're closer. They're working with these tools like day in and day out. And so if you automate part of this flow, starts to make sense. And so we think about like creativity, like a lot of the stuff that a creative professional does, it probably actually isn't that creative, right? I think about this tweet all the time. It's like, I was surprised at how old it is now, but like, it's still like, yeah, like, these are the two websites, right? Like, we think of like, oh, like, I couldn't be a web designer, like, I'm not creative enough. You don't have to worry, like, there's literally like only a few set of options, right? Like, if you go out beyond that, like, you're actually like thinking, oh, actually, this is, you probably might be making a bad experience. Like, you're thinking, you're trying to like design something for, I don't know, this audience that you don't actually care about. Like, the problem, like the creativity comes from the problem that you're trying to solve. And I think we also sort of, and like to get like a bit philosophical, like there's the autographic sort of like, which is like forgeable. And so when we say forgeable, like we say like a painting is an autographic piece of artwork because it is like, you can't like you can, someone is gonna impersonate it and that's forgeable, right? But allographic is like, you know, you have like the orchestra, right? They're playing like classical music all the time, like, and that's not like forgery if you play like Beethoven, like it's not considered forgery, like if you put on a play, right? And so, but it's interesting to think of like how we think of creativity and like we think, oh, like Dali is not creative because the output matches someone else's, like despite the fact that, you know, we consider many musicians that do covers and that sort of thing, like that is creative, like why is that creative? I think with this visual medium as well, like, and it's starting to come across into the music realm as well, as well, like with voice, like why is voice like I don't know, feels very autographic, like I don't know why, like it shares a lot of similarities with music in the sense that it's heard, but it comes from a person, so then there's an individual involved. Like, can you like forge like a voice? I think you can, like, so thinking about this, so to come back to like, to bring Canva into all this, I've tried like little spikes here and there about like with, so one of them was Amper Music, and so they're like an AI music generation service. And so the idea is that, especially like with Canva, like when we started video, I don't know if you guys have done anything with like audio and music. Everyone wants like Despacito, right? Like, fortunately, it's very hard to get the licensing. Like it's like a whole thing, right? And so the idea is like AI generated music. You could, you know, it's royalty free. Like it's new and exciting. Like it's just specific to you. And so Amper, like they're really good. Like yeah, they contacted us and had a little spike. And so like, as an API goes, it's like pretty good. Like it was really like very like all these different entities and like band instruments. Thing is, like I know nothing about music. Like I'm trying to think of like there's a guitar, like there's a flute. Like I don't know, I'd run out of instruments like pretty quickly. And then there's like all these other things like, and you can put like where like things hit. Like I don't even know what that really means. Like in this case, like, and so you get like. These different like, so this is like something that I created, like, I'm like, yeah, it works, right? So like, does it inspire, do you really want this? And the, like, I don't know, and I actually wasn't that, I was like, oh yeah, like, I made some music, like, I mean, it's 30 seconds, but, yeah, it's just, I mean, it is driving classic rock, but, and like, but the thing was like, I couldn't really, like, I don't have the knowledge to like make me, I know like programmatically, and I remember like showing this to like, I don't know if you know, like Canva, like one of the co-founders, Cam, he's a DJ, and he's like, where's the punch, where's the hit, you need like tension and release. I'm like, oh, that music makes a bit more sense now, like, but I just don't have like the capabilities, and so if I don't have the capability, someone has to design this, and so like, so yeah, we can make music, like how can we, like what are terms that like me, like what do I understand? And so like, this is our user, right? Like they don't have the knowledge of like, and so like, and then speaking about like voices, AI and forgery, so like,
hello, my name is East.
yeah. So that's supposed to be, hello, my name is Jess, but it you know, thought that, I don't know, you pronounced it Yeast. I trained it with like my voice, and so like this service, it does sound kind of like me, right? Like,
hello, my name is East.
Like I don't know, like, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's unsettling basically. But this is like after like, I don't know, like 2 minutes worth of like speaking, like, so it's kind of impressive, but also like, would I ever use this? Like, if I'm making like, I don't know, like if I'm making a TikTok, like, why wouldn't I just record it as well, right? Like, there's this problem that like, it sounded cool to have like, oh, let's have voice generated, like AI generated voices, but like, there's like, I don't know, our customer base doesn't really do much.
Canva is the best. Now I don't even need to speak.
Like, I don't know, as an individual, I can speak, right? And so I don't know if you're on TikTok, it's all like there's the meme of like, it is a robotic sounding voice. Like, that's just part of the charm, right? Like, and then there's...
Canva is the best. No, I don't even need to speak.
This is like one of the like canned voice, that one that's trained, and so like the quality is a lot better, but also like it's thinking about voice, like what is it, like gaming and that sort of thing, and so like, and then the voices really sort of resonated with like our user base, right? And so like, and that's the thing, like, and then where do you go from there? Like okay, this voice doesn't work for me, like that's it as the novice, right? Like, you have other options if you're a professional that's like in the industry, but like that I guess that's my sort of like, would like to see like, where can we take things? And so Kaleido, we were like, I won't go into like there's people that know this stuff better than me, but like, so I remember got asked about like, we bought Kaleido, they're like really good at like basically background removal, like their images very good. And so like they had a video product, and it was like, we need like background removal in Canva, like ASAP, like yesterday, like let's just do it, right? And so like, and it kind of works. And so like, if you're passing in like, it's like trained on very specific kind of content and like people, and but it also like the expectations of like an individual like that's using Zoom and TikTok with like very like let's be like, it's like very shitty like quality, like it's just very feathery. It's like, it's good enough, right? Like for their use case, but. And so like, and this is like, yeah, wait, like a step up, but it's not real time. It takes a bit of time to like develop, but then there's times when it like doesn't work out. And like, as a professional, you know, like, I don't know, if you got that, you'd be like, oh man, that happened like super quickly. Like, but again, like you have like no means of recovery, essentially. Like you're just given these tools that you can't really work with, unfortunately, like as a novice. And like that's quite disheartening. Like, as the professional, you know where to go to next. As a novice, you don't have that place. And so like, that's what we try and avoid in Canva. Like, we don't want to give them things that like are just almost there. And so this is like kind of my like overview of like, oh, actually, like it's going to take like, the video is 10 seconds, it's going to take, yeah, like 100 seconds to get like an MP4, and like, and also like, what is the pro button? Like, so there's an alpha mask video, like if you give that to like an individual, like what are they going to do with that? Like, where do they put this? Like, you have a transparent video, but like nowhere actually accepts it. Like, there's all these other like different touch points that you have to start to consider. And like, as opposed to like our conventional sort of like image, like background remover, that kind of just works. Like, and I think like, and there is like forms of recovery, but like, I think this is like so, and to be clear, like Canva has a lot of like ML, like in search and that sort of thing, but like, in terms of like user facing stuff, like, less, but like, cause it is hard to get right. Like, it feels very simple, and like, but like, the amount of like man hours this stuff saves is like insane. Like, this is like our big like money. Like, people sign up to Pro like for this feature, like, because otherwise this is just beyond a lot of people, right? Yeah, and so like, yeah, really, that's the stuff that I really want to. And like, we're not really, I feel like with DALL-E and that sort of thing, it's all like like open text, and so it's like, and if it's like this kind of like that ability to like, yeah, iterate and sort of like keep going basically if things aren't to where you need to go. And so like, yeah, and so like I think we're at this point where like we're starting to get like AI into like the hands of people, like more normal people, but yeah, and I think that's the exciting part rather than like the pro that already knew how to remove backgrounds from videos. Like they can just do it quicker now, basically. But yeah, thank you. That's me.
Our two next speakers, I'm going to introduce them together. So, seen from Australia, they sound like neighbor to me back in France, and we'll have some French accent again with Johan, which is a Belgian accent, actually, not French. He has a PhD in applied mathematics from the University of Namur, and he has worked with University of Wollongong in environmental and urban smart cities, all application of IoTs, and he's now at NVIDIA. And Thomas also, who's coming educated in Poland in applied computer science, in Japan, and at UNSW in business, who's also at NVIDIA, and at CSIRO as well. And they're gonna give us some demonstration of really the back end of all this revolution, the hardware that allow all those crazy level of calculations that you need to do all this creative work that Joshi and Jess illustrated as well. So thanks to you guys.
All right. So thank you so much for having us here. So we won't be talking much about the hardware, but we're going to show you some of the use cases. We try to hide all the hardware and the difficult components behind the scenes in a way. And hopefully we inspire you what's possible to be done with the NVIDIA tech. So we're not talking about low-level frameworks. We're going to be showing some of the use cases and how possibly you could use AI using almost zero or no code, right? So that's how we try to frame this presentation in a way. So when we're starting talking about the AI, and NVIDIA itself, as we perhaps know, is the cutting-edge company doing everything around AI computer graphics. It covers a variety of different applications in creative space, but as well lots of stuff in engineering and science and so on. So if you look at the future, how we're looking at the future, we talk about this concept called metaverse, right? And we believe that metaverse is the future that connects across AI frameworks, but as well different pipelines in 3D, IoT, robotics, and so on. So we're going to show you some of the examples of that. And to the rescue, what we have this framework called, or platform called NVIDIA Omniverse. I'm going to show that as well because it's designed for creative practitioners like yourself, and it connects several different pipelines. So the tools you're currently using for developing, let's say, 3D virtual worlds, you can continue using that, but integrate everything in the Omniverse. And on the top of it, you have like this another layer when you have a variety of different things like AI frameworks, doing magic with your avatars, doing magic with your AI pipelines and so on. You can connect it directly through Omniverse and so on. So we're going to talk about this in a second as well. So we're coming to the augmented age. So when AI is almost playing a role in every single aspect on our lives, right? So we're seeing that more and more, and this is becoming part of our universe, right? And when we're gonna do, who knows, in the future. But coming back to a kind of, like how we frame this Omniverse platform. So there's many different problems that are unsolved. And currently when you're doing like, let's say, digital twin of the current universe, the virtual universe, then one of the problems we have, the process is very sequential. So you have artists designing, meshes, doing graphics, and it's going one after another. You have to pass the files. You have to, like, have this kind of, mechanism which is not going at the same time. So we're trying to resolve that using our Omniverse, when you can build so-called connectors and connecting to Omniverse platform, and you can have designer working in, let's say, 3D Studio Max, somebody else working, any kind of platforms you see in here, Unreal Engine, for instance. And all of that is directly connected through Omniverse. So you see the angle of the universe in just one window and interconnecting different elements and different software packages. And you can do it as well across the globe. So you may have collaborators working from different countries, from different locations, or from the same room, but using different computers, right? And as well, like perspective of NVIDIA and looking at visualization per se, we're pushing boundaries of real-time ray tracing. So the stuff that wasn't possible only 5 years ago, you had to like render the photorealistic frames waiting maybe 5 hours. Like I've heard like the Avatar movie, one frame was taking 4 hours to render a frame. And imagine how many frames, how many years compute time you had to put in making sure the whole movie is properly rendered. Now you can do that stuff 90 frames per second today, okay? And now, of course, we're addressing new normal, so enabling hybrid workforces, so making sure you can collaborate across the globe using the tool. Then we resolve the problems as well with the big data. The files are becoming very big, so the Omniverse is allowing you to stream only those elements of the compositions that's required to have collaborative kind of, like overview on the design of the virtual worlds you're doing. And as well, the most important thing is this kind of tedious process when you have to do file conversion. In Omniverse, everything is coming through USD-defined format. We can talk about this as well a bit more. It's becoming really like HTML of metaverse in the future. So we're saying it's USD gonna be future like HTML is today for the web. So USD will be the future for collaborative 3D universe. And Omniverse is allowing you to avoid this tedious process of making sure you basically, like have one studio and you don't need to convert files in every step in sequential, you do it at the same time. And then basically, like, if you look at this particular thing, we have something called Nucleus, which is basically the element of the platform that connects all the different services together and interchange between different software packages and connects to a variety of different techniques that are basically part of the platform. So you can download the platform for free. It's designed to be basically given for creative practitioners like yourself, and you can start using it from day one. And we're gonna show you some of the capabilities. So the next slide, I'm gonna show you Omniverse in action.
We show multiple users using different 3D applications to collaborate in building a virtual world. On the bottom left, a modeler uses Maya to model a bar in the kitchen. On the top left, a layout artist places objects in the scene with Unreal Engine. A texture painter paints the back wall with Substance Painter on the center left. All updates are merged into the same scene in real time, while path trace rendering in Omniverse Kit on the right.
So 3 software packages, you're doing different elements and compositions is done in Omniverse in real time. And what you're getting as a rendering is real-time ray tracing, ray-traced image, which is super powerful for the future of Metaverse. And especially when you train the brains of the robots and the photorealistic rendering, kind of like views of the universe, you can apply that to the universe as well. So that's a capabilities you can get out of the Omniverse. All what you're seeing here, it's not pre-rendered. It's using like, of course, it's captured from the view, but it runs in real time.
See you in Omniverse.
So definitely recommend you to have a look a bit deeper. We do have only short period of time to give this presentation, but if you're interested in having some kind of, like hands-on sessions or follow-ups, longer kind of, capabilities demonstrations, just let us know. So we're very happy to come back and give like 5 hours talk, okay, about different elements of the Omniverse. But to show you also how in collaborative way the universe can be done, so some of you have heard that landing on the moon was fake. Look how it is done in Omniverse.
So Kevin is there. Am I looking at him right now? Yeah. I'm looking at Kevin. Hey Kevin, that's where you are, buddy. That's where you are. Hey, did you know on the moon you can play golf?
I don't know where we parked our landing. Oh, there it is.
Where's the limb? I am done. I'm out.
That was home. Go for it.
Yes. So Omniverse is just a big set of tools for collaborative creation. And one of the tools that we have as part of the platform is audio to face. So we already touched a little bit about text to speech with the presentation from Canvas. So okay, we can generate audio speech using text, but the next thing would be also to animate the face of a character based on that voice data. You could do it by hand, and if you try to do that, it takes a lot of time and a lot of people to get it right, to get that lip sync right. So what our researchers have been working on is actually some AI that is able to automate that facial animation. You can see here.
It's so dark. Where is it? I can't see it. I can't see anything. But I know it's there. Waiting.
The beige hue on the waters of the loch impressed all, including the French queen, before she heard that symphony again, just as young Arthur won.
Okay, I have a few jokes here. What do you call a fish without any eyes? Psh.
Yeah, like that kind of dad jokes. So really here, the goal is to help the artist for the animation. And the latest version allows you actually to detect the emotion of the people in real time as well. So you can really play with a range of options there. Now, when it comes to image processing or creating volumetric rendering of scenery, we could use photogrammetry. And if you play with that, you know that it takes a lot of images and it can take days to render even a simple scene. So our researcher worked on what they call NERV, which is a neural graphic engine that is able to create those kind of scenery in less than a couple of minutes for decent, complex. That's a 3D rendering that didn't use any photogrammetry, just a couple of pictures of the lady in the center of the... And you can play that kind of algorithm on your own laptop or computer, and it has this NGP. So you might be afraid of all the coding that you might need to do those kind of things, and we are aware of that. That can be a barrier for people that would like to play with AI. So we started to build a repository of models, pre-trained models, that anyone can download and play with it. Right? So you can just go to our website, download it, run it, and a couple of lines, even using some graphical user interface. In some case, you can start building your own model and applications. We've got a lot of those are for computer vision, but you've got for text-to-speech. Since we are running a bit out of time, probably the next one. But but you got the idea. So the goal is to build tools to enable people to develop their vision. So you might have known us as a hardware company back in the past, and we built a lot of different types of hardware. But now we start to build libraries and tools on top of that, and we aim to help people and developers and artists in different sectors and industries. So based on the hardware and the libraries, we've got solutions for the movie industry, music industry, smart cities, environmental monitoring. So we've got a lot of things there. And if we've got maybe 1 more minute, just a little summary about the work we've been doing over the last couple of years and what AI means for us. If it doesn't work, it's Microsoft fault. The music is actually generated by AI, not played by humans.
I am a visionary, expanding our understanding of the smallest particles. And the infinite possibilities of the universe. I am a guardian, protecting us on all of our journeys. Ensuring our most precious passengers make it home safely. I am a healer, searching for hidden threats in every cell. And delivering precise care with every breath. Taking on complex tasks in the most challenging environments and giving our crops room to grow. I am a creator, transforming the very fabric of our everyday lives and using the creative DNA of the masters to inspire a new generation of art. I am a learner, taking just minutes to discover how to crawl, walk, and stand on my own. I am a storyteller, giving emotion to words. Und die Sprachbarrieren abzubauen. I am even the composer of the music. I am AI, brought to life by NVIDIA, deep learning, and brilliant minds everywhere.
Thank you very much. It was really high. No, it was really showing the opportunities and the promises. You know, yesterday we concluded a little bit on the threats and the anxiety that is created by AI in the creative practice of music. Lots of the questions were coming to that, and today we are on the other part of the cycle. You know, all the opportunities, all the inspiration that it gives to us. Again, back to multidisciplinary, we all agree that it needs to be multidisciplinary for these opportunities to manifest and to be able to protect ourselves from these threats. So the next speaker is Tamara Ogilvy from CSRO, the National AI Center, and she's gonna talk about how supporting small and medium businesses into implementing AI practices. So it's a form of multidisciplinary, not within disciplines, but I would say within institutions. You know, the commercial practice, the small businesses, the big government center, how all these things can collaborate together for a brighter future. So thank you, Tamara.
Good morning, Tamara Ogilvie, but I much prefer the way that you said my surname. Sounds far more exotic. Yes, I'm from the CSIRO, specifically with the National AI Centre, a new centre that's been established and funded through the federal government, hosted by CSIRO, with the intent of supporting AI adoption in Australia. But I bring to you today my other lenses and hats, you know, from sort of previous roles and previous lives, to be honest, I feel like. Given I got up at 4 a.m. this morning, I have 3 small children. So there's a lot of lives that I've lived in one day, in 24-hour cycles sometimes. So the intent of the National AI Centre is to really support Australia's AI capability and to see that there is opportunity for Australian people, our businesses and the country overall. And it's built upon the fact that Australia certainly has incredible AI strengths. We rank pretty high when it comes to a number of emerging technologies on the research side of things, including in AI. But unfortunately, we tend to fall down at times when it comes to the adoption of certain technologies, and AI is no different. This is an IBM International AI Adoption Index that's produced annually, and that puts Australian AI adoption in industry at around 24%, which compares to the global average of 34% and a hell of a lot lower than the likes of India and China. But when we consider the fact that this survey is based on, they interviewed 500 respondents in each country, and 80% of those businesses who were surveyed had more than 50 employees. Unfortunately, in Australia, of our 2.4 million businesses, 2.3 million of them have less than 20 employees. So that sample is potentially not at all representative. That 24%, which doesn't actually feel remarkably high in itself, is potentially not at all representative of what's really going on in those companies below that threshold of 50 employees. And so if we look at some other statistics that exist that might help us to understand what's going on in use of technology across different industries, we can refer to the ABS statistics, the Business Characteristics Survey, an annual vehicle to measure innovation, IT and innovation within Australian companies. This surveys some 7,000 Australian entities across all sizes, and that puts the adoption of AI at 2%. So we're sitting somewhere in and around 2 to 24%, neither of which feels particularly promising at this point. And there is a huge opportunity. Alpha Beta puts the market of Australian AI and digital at 315 billion as a potential, with potentially 1.2 million new technology jobs by 2034, and a further 5.3 million jobs on the back of that industry. But we do know that there are barriers to the adoption of AI, and they include, which I'll run through in a bit more detail in a moment, but they certainly include things like businesses not knowing where to start and general consumer or community sentiment towards emerging technologies, including AI. As AI continues to have a greater impact on companies and economies, societies, it's very much important that we take the issue of community sentiment seriously and ensure that we have an informed and balanced perception. KPMG and University of Queensland looked at trust in artificial intelligence, and this was fairly representative of our population by gender, age, and location. And respondents really reported a low understanding of AI, including how and when it's used in ways that affect their everyday life, and that there was therefore a fairly low, understandably, a fairly low trust of AI. We don't trust what we don't understand. The National AI Centre is really driving our work and initiatives around 3 key themes. Responsible AI, that is the development of principles, tools and practices to ensure that our businesses develop and importantly operationalise responsible and ethical AI. Driving in diversity and inclusion in our AI talent and in system design, delivery and impact. And AI at scale, supporting businesses to move from pilot scale to full implementation and ensuring that our businesses have the ability to realise AI value. And that realisation of value is something that's very interesting to me, the concept of business models. A business model being how an organisation creates value, its customer value proposition, and then how a business captures the value, how it gets paid for what it's producing. I previously worked at a centre called the Creative Industries Innovation Centre. It was around for 6 years to 2015, which feels like a lifetime ago. And at that centre, it was based at the University of Technology here in Sydney, and we provided free business advice to creative companies. And that included businesses from creative agencies, software developers, games designers, architects. It was really quite broad in the definition of creative industries. And we worked with over 1,500 companies in this group. And there are a couple of sort of things that really stick in my mind about working with businesses in creative industries that I think is really relevant when it comes to AI adoption. And they were that creative businesses, I think still, are really typically dealing with a sort of fee-for-service business model. This kind of pitch, win, do cycle. That generally creates sort of a sense of over-reliance on the principles, on the creatives themselves. And that technological change was something that these creative companies, like most businesses, weren't necessarily handling particularly well in-house, even where they were potentially the developers of some of these technologies. What we were often seeing was that whilst key activities once performed manually were being sort of automated through the use of certain technologies, they weren't being developed as part of a total workflow, which was what you sort of spoke to earlier. And we were seeing that technologies across the board just really weren't being thought about holistically within the business, that there were these sort of, specific use cases. No one was bringing their head out of the sand to really see then how that changes the business and the needs of the business model overall. So that's just a sampling. It shows you the business proportions, the styles of businesses that we were working with, so it was fairly broad. And the other interesting thing that we often found, and this just shows you, this is an example of some financials of production companies we were dealing with. We were dealing with SMEs, so any businesses to go through certain of the services need to be sort of over 1 million in turnover. We also dealt with, to a smaller degree, just a lighter service, I suppose, for companies that were turning over less than 1 million. And what we were seeing was that there was no point in pursuing growth for growth's sake, including through the use of technologies that might actually make your business more efficient, if all you're doing is doubling your turnover but still taking home the same amount. Is that sort of the best possible result for you as a small to medium enterprise? So those the middle category there of businesses turning over between 1 and 2 million, the average was 1.4. compared to this larger bucket, folks in the turnover bracket of 2 to 5 million, with a turnover of just over 3.1 million, they were both taking home $100,000 in profit. So although companies in that middle bucket were aspiring to, achieving the turnover seemingly of these much larger companies that would double their size in turnover, they weren't potentially sleeping any better at night by turning over almost twice the amount. And so I'm really interested in seeing that the emerging technologies, including AI, are integrated into small and medium-sized company workflows well enough that it changes that result, that if you're working, probably a hell of a lot harder to actually manage a business that turns over that amount compared to the middle amount, wouldn't it be nice if actually you're adopting the technologies in a way that can support you to have maybe an extra holiday, whatever it is you want to spend your money on. And I'll come back to the National AI Centre now, just to give you a bit of an overview of where we've gotten to. The centre's been around for 6 months. I recently joined. I've been with the CSIRO for the last 2 years, but only joined the National AI Centre a month ago. But over this last 6 months, what we've been doing is conducting listening tours, travelling the country, speaking to industry, academics, community, to really get an understanding of AI perception, AI concerns, challenges and successes. And the themes, I can't really do them justice just now because, you know, if I try and summarise them, of course, I lose the nuance. But these are the key areas that were time and time again coming up. And I'll probably speak to some of these perhaps when we have a bit of a chat. But, you know, just quickly, under the sort of overarching theme of community, we were really hearing for a strong ask from businesses, from academia, from community alike, that there are ways and methods or initiatives to really support increased understanding and awareness of AI and of its positive outcomes. I think that we've all heard plenty of, you know, worst case scenarios, and we certainly, as I said earlier, you know, if we can't trust what we don't understand, equally we can't trust what we can't see. If we can't see the benefits, of which there are many, then you know, we're going to sort of see this hampered adoption. In industry, there's a general awareness of poor leadership understanding, and especially in larger enterprise, where there isn't a literacy, I suppose, at sort of the C-suite level of a business or at the board level, and that's hampering wider adoption within organisation. You know, whilst it might be siloed within the IT team or the engineering team, it's not able to be adopted more broadly because others across the business just don't understand how to see that feed through to different business units. And in terms of ecosystem development and of education, multidisciplinary approaches certainly is a very strong theme that's come through, that we need to see AI potentially as a tool or part of education within all disciplines and vice versa, that we can't just see, you know, that there is a need for humanities and the like to be exposed to those in faculties of engineering and IT. Wrap it up there because I know that Pierre wants to have a chat and ask questions to various people, but I'd love to share more information with any of you here who'd love to know more about the National AI Centre. We've got big hopes and ambitions, and really want to be working with people who are already doing great stuff in these spaces and amplifying what's already happening, because there is amazing stuff happening out there. There is a groundswell, and we just want to really see that what we do helps to elevate that. Thanks.
Tamara, it was a great conclusion and very something that talked to me a lot. You know, working in medical industry, AI, the hype for AI is big over there as well. You know? And yesterday was mentioned the threat again. We have a saying in the digital health space that radiologists are not going to be replaced by AI, but radiologists who use AI are going to replace the one who don't. And I think all the demo we saw this morning is a bit the same thing, that no, AI is not going to replace the whole workflow, the whole creative process, but like that's what Jess, I think, was explaining, that the floor is raising, and we need to be able to use this tool in all these creative practices, in creative industry, in all other digital industries, and those domains need to work together. And I really like your slide where I saw the regulatory, because in medical, that's what I end up doing 90% of my time. I like to call myself a creative. I studied engineering to make things, but I end up trying to work in a regulated space. And that's someone that was said yesterday, I think it was T who mentioned that the arts, commerce is the second non-regulated industry after drugs. Medical technology is complete opposite. It's ultra-regulated, and you can't do anything without ticking boxes and submitting applications to various government agencies to get the right, not even to sell your product, but even to give your product to beta testers is already a large steps to go through. And I'm glad to witness the spirit of your talk to be really this open arms of CSIRO to help this industry work together to solve this issue. And trust was a big word in that. Now, how can we trust AI? That's a big word in the medical technology space. It was a big word this morning. The moon landing, yeah. Conspiracies, no. People protesting in the street because they don't trust vaccines. They don't trust our public health policies. So my question to all the panelists is, how can we collaborate between creatives and regulators, which are more administrative people, maybe not that creative? How can we shape that to use AI to give trust to the public into the future? And maybe Tamara, you could try answering first before the other panelists.
I think regulation kicks in where self-regulation has appeared to not work. You know, we sort of get there when principles or frameworks, voluntary frameworks, haven't, you know, sort of worked, I suppose. And so I think the positive messaging and ensuring that, you know, creatives are storytellers so often, the positive messaging of what these technologies actually can be used for is really important, so that community is hearing those stories. There is risk in everything, of course, but there's also so much opportunity. And just back to your point about sort of, you know, radiologists and the concept of sort of certain professions being elbowed out of the way by technologies, you know, everything is iterative. Every industry since the dawn of time has changed, and technologies have just morphed, you know, our professions and our thinking, including creativity. So I think just, you know, balancing the perspectives.
So yeah, our perspective, as you could see, NVIDIA going through the industry and perhaps some of our use cases that we're showing you is trying to integrate a variety of different, let's say, AI solutions to some of the platforms and make it available to you for free. So the whole thing is actually to make sure that the tools we develop are actually validated by the community, by you, making sure they are safe, they are useful, and they bring in good as well. So I strongly encourage everyone to contact us if you're interested in having some kind of like ongoing collaborations as well. We do have actually workforce as well where we collaborate with industries, academia, and education in Australia and across the globe. We're not only connecting in Australia, we can connect with the whole world and different practitioners across the globe, and making sure that we develop stuff as a community and showing our leaders as well and those people who are building all these, you know, legislations, that AI is a safe place as well. So it's responsibility of all of us, I believe, myself.
Thank you very much. I'll shift to a second question. Probably Johan and Bothik would be very relevant to answer this one. Sure. Now, we talk about risks that are the bad things that may or could happen. But we talked also about ethical practice, and we need to consider also the bad things that are already happening. And I was thinking the other day with this hype of Midjourney and DALL-E, what is the environmental footprint of all this hype? Now, how many hours of expensive computing are happening every day just to pop out those memes?
We are a green company. Yet all those big models, well, we make models bigger and bigger with billions and soon trillions of parameters, and definitely you need very large compute resources for that, like supercomputers. You don't run that on your. What we try to do for the last generations is to make the hardware more and more efficient, more and more green. We will always need more and more computing resources. There is no way around that because we want bigger models to solve bigger problems. What we can do is to make sure that the hardware and the infrastructure is as power efficient as possible. And there are many ways we can solve that with technology, but probably not the right time to go into those details, but I'm happy to chat more about it later.
And Bothik, did you get any figure by chance? Or?
No, I wasn't able to find the exact numbers there, but yeah, I mean, like, you know, the model training costs can be quite expensive, right? Like, you know, the initial work that needs to get done to actually sort of like put a model together can be astonishing. astonishingly expensive. Like, you know, weeks, years of compute, right? That can occur, right? And it's got a very large environmental footprint. But the you know, the path from there is interesting, right? Because once a model has been trained, it can be reduced. You can have smaller versions of it where you trade off fidelity for runtime compute, for like performance and efficiency. So it's an interesting question. I think it's a question of sort of like making conscious decisions about what models are trained in the first place and that initial large compute. And then, you know, once you've done that, you know, there are more interesting questions around how much do you share that information? You know, you've got a model that has computed a result, like how open are you with sort of sharing that with other people and sharing those weights with other people? So you make the most of the sort of the sunk environmental cost that's already been expended.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Are there any questions in the audience?
Thanks so much, everyone, for your talks. Really, really interesting. So I have two questions, slightly different. The first is for Tamara, and the second is for the NVIDIA and Canberra teams. So I lead a data science team at a big corporate, and in terms of for yourself, Tamara, my question is, you know, the models that we build are pretty straightforward using structured data, but the difficulty is in sort of, you know, deploying them, right? In terms of having the cost basically of having a seamless platform to kind of deploy easily. I assume that for smaller companies, you know, kind of cost and expertise are problems. I guess, you know, the government sort of recently has announced investment in things like AI, cyber, quantum computing. Like how does business, which kind of faces these barriers of cost/expertise in implementing AI, which is, you know, not very easy, I think, for a lot of businesses who are not tech companies and don't have that initial focus on data science and AI, how do we sort of leverage what the government is trying to do to help businesses to do that?
I mean, I think skills is obviously really important. Everybody is hearing skills, you know, and that there's a shortage of certain skills within this country at the moment, and there's a number of initiatives and different organisations who are looking at measures to address that. For SMEs specifically, access to those, even if you could find those people in the job market, you know, you won't necessarily be able to afford them. And so the concept of kind of certain shared resources and access to AI services, I think, for a certain type of business is really important, rather than building in-house and having those specialist skills in your company becomes sort of less relevant, where if a country is being served by enough AI providers and services. CSIRO recently has just done a survey, and we haven't released this information yet publicly, but it was really looking at assessing is there a market failure in access to AI compute infrastructure and AI services. And it has largely shown us that the market is saying no, there isn't. It potentially is more about getting people on that journey and knowing what they need to be looking for, as opposed to an inability to find what they need once they're looking for it.
Great, thanks. And so my second question is a little bit more philosophical for the NVIDIA and Canberra teams. Really interesting to see a lot of your really advanced sort of AI capabilities and the ability of you know, these large models, assume some ensemble neural network models to kind of do a lot of things that we traditionally think as human kind of skill sets, right? Kind of creating art, writing substantive content, playing bridge and Go and beating humans at this sort of thing. You know, previously it was always, oh, we're really happy to automate the menial tasks. And now I'm kind of looking at it and looking at, you know, these new sort of auto ML capabilities and wondering if my data scientists are going to automate themselves out of a job one day. I guess, like, do we feel that at some point with such, you know, accelerated advancements in this technology, do we almost feel like there's a sense of a threat to our humanity in a way, that the machines can kind of do all this stuff that, you know, a lot better than a lot of us, right?
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? Like machines coming to destroy us, right? Remove all the jobs from the market. I don't think it will happen. It was the same conversation perhaps 100 years ago, Industrial Revolution. All of the jobs will be taken, didn't happen. we believe, in particular my personal opinion is as well, that AI is to enhance our capabilities, make us, more efficient to automate certain things as well, and make sure, like that we have, better world going forward, right? And if we're looking, I always speak, we know about Turing test, for instance, right? And we're looking as well at something that's like next level, which is basically Nobel Turing test, whether AI can be inventor, whether it can invent new things coming on the horizon, and when it happens, right? So there's a paper last year, I think, in Science published. If you're interested, just I can flip you the link later on. That talks about some of the aspects that needs to be fulfilled in AI automation as well to make it happen, which is fascinating, I think, when it's going to happen, when we're going to have like neural networks that will have capability of our human brains. At the moment, AI is very kind of, artificial maybe in a way. It solves certain problems, but not everything. And it won't take our jobs, I believe. It will help us, even if your data scientists are doing lots of code, I assume, right? And the code can be automated now with AI helping you, filling up, the gaps in the code, making it better, faster. You'll be more efficient. And, you can talk about many different aspects of that. Johan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah. So maybe when we speak about all those big AI models, what I like to see them, it's a big black box that actually encompass all the training data that we have fed them before. So yes, they are good at reproducing things they've seen in the past, but outside that, they are not very good at extrapolating, right? So they will still lack the human imagination. And in the current capabilities, they are good at one particular task, or maybe a couple, but you don't have a model that is able to do everything at once. And yeah, there are a lot of discussion there. We don't know if it's going to happen or not. Jan Lecken thinks it's possible. We'll see what happens, but I think we're safe for now. Yeah, and GC, we've got a lot of pre-trained models that you can use, actually, for free, and build on top of that. But it's not because something is available and free that it's easy to use. You still need expertise to use those tools. You can give your nephew an AI model and say, okay, do some ML with it. It's going to be garbage, probably, because it doesn't know what the model is for. So you need expertise.
I was just going to say, we like to attach like human attributes to this thing, like it'll be like it'll solve things like a human, like, but it's like, and that's like, I don't know, we attach that to like dogs, right? It smiles, like sort of thing, like that's very like, I don't know, natural lens, but yeah, it is just data being fed in, like the concept of like say like, I don't know, like, we're speaking about like environmental like implications, and there's also like say like like AI is racist sort of thing, like it's just data, right? Like there's like, so like there's biases that come into it, but like if we correct the data, like that's an approach to this thing, but like to call it racist, to call that thing is like ascribing like human terms to like data models, and so like we say like, oh, this is intelligent, this is smart, like this is like it's good, it's bad, it's like, yeah, it's dumb, like, and that's the thing. There's like the AI effect, or like the paradox of AI. So like, the ELIZA, yeah. So there's like any like sufficiently advanced, like as soon as you like figure out what the AI does, like, oh, it's just like, oh, it's just a bunch of if else's, oh, it's just a neural, like it's like, oh, it's just computation, like we understand it, so therefore it's no longer AI anymore. So like, and we keep getting there. Like, what is AI? Like now it's like the stuff that we haven't figured out how to do yet or don't understand.
I might just make just a small sort of like addition to that and a little bit of riff on that. I think the risk here is with the technology when it's oversold, right? So I'm going to pick an adjacent example, which is facial recognition, right? So facial recognition about a decade ago was sold as this objective technology, right? That we'll be able to do sort of, I guess, like identify people in an unbiased way. And we carry around this idea kind of like, kind of like a camera, right? Like the computer is an objective observer, it's not biased, right? But what happened was that it got, the technology was oversold as objective and biased and as this big thing. And it turns out, no, it's extremely biased. It's extremely flawed. So the real issues here is, at least to me, my feeling is that it's less that the technology is a thing on its own and more that it gets oversold, right? And I think that is something we need to be really careful of in particular.
Thanks so much.